right. Good morning, everybody. Let's call to order this meeting of the Executive Committee. Clerk, please call the roll.
Whitburn,
Here.
Elo Rivera,
Present.
Montgomery Steppe is absent. Frank,
Here.
Moreno,
Present.
Bush,
Here.
Vogel.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's move to non-agenda public comment. This provides 2 minutes for anyone who would like to comment on something that is not on today's agenda, but is within the purview of the Executive Committee. Clerk, do we have any non-agenda public comment?
We do. Alex Wong, please stand up and say your comment.
I applaud MTS' decision to accelerate the increasing late night trolley frequencies to 15 minutes and 1. This will allow low-income workers who currently drive to work at great PR shifts to switch to transit. MTS should also increase because frequencies in June 2025. I'm concerned that MTS may delay 7.5-minute frequencies on the mid-coast in order to balance deficits. I ask MTS to reconsider this decision. Increased frequency shortens travel times, alleviates overcrowding, and helps passengers feel safer. After all, in 2023, 84% of the trolley park-on crimes happened at stations rather than on board trolleys. Increasing mid-coast frequencies to 7.5 minutes is an excellent investment. It only costs $3.7 million annually to do so, and the Blue Line has lowered per passenger subsidies than nearly every MTS bus route. And with Blue Line ridership grown by 11.4% in the past fiscal year alone, 7.5-minute mid-coast frequencies cannot come sooner. It is also important to de-interline the airport rail connection from existing trolley lines. Currently, the airport trolley connection will share tracks with the Green Line and Blue Line, thus for parts of its link, thus creating a bottleneck. And that will limit Green Line frequencies possibly to every 15 minutes, which is not good because, of course, the Green Line is serving Mission Valley, which is home to some of the largest transit-oriented developments in the nation. So it is imperative to really separate the airport transit service, whether it be a trolley, whether it be a people mover, to really make sure that it doesn't share tracks with existing trolley services so that it doesn't create a bottleneck, so that the Green Line can run as frequently as
30
possible.
seconds left.
Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you. All right, let's take up the approval of the minutes of the Joint Audit Oversight and Executive Committee meeting of June 13, 2024. Clerk, do we have any public comment on those minutes?
We do not.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes? All right, we have a motion from Member Moreno and a second from Member Frank. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Let's move on to our discussion items. Item 4 is the transit amenities study and oversight. Dennis Dunstan to provide us with this presentation.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Excited to bring this item to you. In July of this year, the board approved a document called the Monitoring Report for the Distribution of Transit Amenities Policy, which is a mouthful, but that is a federally required report that we need to bring to the board every 3 years, and it essentially discusses our compliance with our distribution of transit amenities policy. That's an administrative policy. That board item generated a lot of discussion about where we want to go in the future with amenities, and there was this concept of bringing a more aspirational document called a transit amenities plan. So that's what this document is working towards, what this agenda item today is working towards. It's essentially bringing a consultant on board to do a transit amenities study. And that study, the culmination of that study would be a transit amenities plan, which would really look at all of our bus stops, all of our trolley stations throughout our entire service area, and look at what possibilities there are for improved amenities for our customers. The study is projected to be approximately $500,000. We'd do the procurement for that consultant this fall through the winter. And so that would be partially funded in FY25 through the mid-year budget amendment, and then partially in FY26. At the same time, we'd be seeking grants to pay for that. So our goal today is to get some feedback from you on attachment A to the agenda item, which is really a framework for a scope of work. So it's not actually the scope of work that we put out for a consultant, but it's actually just a framework. And the reason for that is because we really want to get your feedback and make sure that we've covered all of our bases. That includes everything that you want to include before we go out and have a consultant bid on that. So, but what I'd like to do today is just to go through our current bus stop amenities, our current trolley station amenities, and talk a little bit about our current system so you have a better idea of what that means for what we could do in the future. So right now we do have memoranda of understanding with certain jurisdictions, certain cities in the county of San Diego, and then others do their own. So typically our amenities that we provide at bus stops are benches and shelters. And we have, for a long time, we've had MOUs with the cities of San Diego, La Mesa, Imperial Beach, National City, and Santee. Some of those cities also install their own bus stop furniture. More recently, within the past couple of years, we brought on the county of San Diego and the cities of Chula Vista and Lemon Grove. The cities of Poway and Coronado have opted to do their own bus stop furniture. And then we're right now working with the city of El Cajon to bring them on board as well. Trolley station amenities, I'm not as focused on because those are very standardized throughout the system. We'll talk a little bit about those and what those look like. But they're a little bit standardized. This is what the trolley stations look like. We have essentially two types of shelters. One's a larger shelter, what we call the large canopy, and the other's a smaller one, the small canopy. Most stations have at least one large canopy. Some have more depending on just the space available. The two images on the screen right now show a double-sided, and that's because they have bus stops on the reverse side of the canopy. We also have static information kiosks as well as electronic information on the variable message signs. We have seating, trash cans, recycling cans, vending machines, pay phones, as well as the ticket vending machines, and then the pronto fare validators. So that's essentially standard at every station. I can't think of any real exceptions that we have to this. The only real variability is the number of large canopies versus small canopies, just depending on the station footprint that we have. There are some stations that have some additional things based on need. Elevators, we have SDSU, some of the Midco stations, Grantville, Grossmont, et cetera. We have escalators only at SDSU. And then we have MTS provided restrooms at 5 stations. And then, of course, there are other public restrooms within the vicinity of some of our other stations. Bus stops are a little bit more varied. So I'd like to go through the furniture first that MTS provides. We have one standard shelter that we use. We have a contractor that installs these and maintains these, sells the advertising on them, and then MTS gets a portion of that revenue from the advertising. So the two images on the left side of the screen are 2 shelters that are installed right now in our system, one in Mount Hope, one in San Ysidro. The benches are similar. It's a different contract right now, but similar. We have a contractor that installs the benches. We actually purchase the shelters and benches, so we own them. The contractor doesn't own them. We purchase them with our own capital money, but then the contractor installs them and maintains them. So the 2 benches you see, one's in Kearny Mesa and one's in Canto. The one on the bottom right there, the 2 benches that you see on Imperial Avenue and Canto there, you can see that there was some work required to be done to fit those benches on that sidewalk. It's probably a 4-foot sidewalk. So we needed to expand that in order to put the benches there. So there was some capital work that needed to be done. So you can see we've expanded the sidewalk in the back a little bit with some a small curb in the back because of the slope of the site. So this is one of the challenges that we see at all of our bus stops. They're all a little bit different. Then we do have some more unique station infrastructure that was installed by Sandag at our rapid stations. And I show 3 on the right side of the screen, the Superloop stations that were installed in 2009, the Mid-City Rapid in 2014, and then South Bay Rapid in 2018. These all look very different. This is something that we struggled with a little bit with Sandag. We wanted something that was more standardized, but because there was such a lengthy time in between the installation of all of these and going through the process, Sandag ended up with fairly different designs for each of these. I think we're in a place with Sandag now where they understand our needs a little bit better. And as we move forward, we're going to see something that looks a little bit more in line with our own furniture, like what you see on the left, but maybe expanded a little bit for the rapid stations. And I should say that the maintenance of the rapid stations is funded by Transnet. So, and that's a big difference for us because the benches and shelters that we provide, we have a contractor that does that. It's the advertising that pays for the maintenance of that. We do get some revenue back from that. Whereas the rapid stations, because they're so unique, because they're larger, they have more amenities, they are much more expensive to maintain. So Transnet funds all of that. That maintenance doesn't come out of our own budget. There is other bus stop furniture in addition to what we have. I mentioned that some jurisdictions do their own furniture. So I put up some examples. In the upper left, the city of Lemon Grove has some green shelters. These are actually in the process of being replaced over the next few years. Those will be replaced by ours now that we have an agreement with city of Lemon Grove. They want to be out of that business, so we'll take over that program and replace their green shelters with ours. In the middle, the city of Imperial Beach has opted to put a surfboard type design bench at some of our stops. They also have a trash can at that stop, so they maintain both of those items. And then a third party installed a shelter in Canto at Imperial and Valencia Parkway, and that's what you see on the upper right. That's got some nice leaves and some rock type benches there for seating. It's actually very attractive. But that's maintained by that entity that installed that. The city of San Diego in the lower left provides trash cans at some of our stops. It's not exactly a science in where those trash cans get put, but we do work with city environmental services to hopefully get those trash cans where we need them. Another third-party organization that has put shelters out is the City Heights Business Association in the City Heights area. So in the middle and the bottom there, that's some shelters that they've installed at University and Fairmont and City Heights. And so those red, narrow, hip roof shelters that you see up in that area, as well as the trash can next to it, those are all maintained by the City Heights Business Association. And then the last one is some benches that the Point Loma Association put out on Rosecrans. So the important thing about all of this is that MTS doesn't install, maintain, or remove any of this furniture. In fact, all of these entities have agreements and encroachment permits with the cities that they work in. So they have to go through that permitting process with the cities. We aren't a party to that. We do ask and work with the cities to make sure that we can look at the furniture and make sure that it's going to be compatible with our services and our operation. It doesn't provide any obstacles to us. So, but we don't do any of the maintenance or anything, installation or anything related to this furniture that you see here. So some of the challenges that we see on why we don't necessarily have seating and shelters and everything at every stop. And the upper left picture that you see here is a perfect example of what not a lot, but a fair number of our stops look like. This is an area that doesn't actually have any sidewalks at all. This is next to a mobile home park off of Highway 80 in the East County. And this is actually fairly typical for some of the county areas, but it's not unseen in some of our more urban areas that don't have adequate infrastructure as well. And obviously we can't bolt a shelter or a bench down to an area that doesn't have any concrete. It's just a dirt shoulder there. If we were to want to improve a situation like this, we would actually have to build out the entire sidewalk, including curb, storm drainage, sidewalk, ADA, pedestrian access, et cetera, plus build the pad for the shelter. So it'd be actually a very, very expensive project for us to take that on. That's something we'd look at to the jurisdictions to actually do that type of public works improvement. And then we would come in and install a shelter later. Just below that is a bus stop. This is on Adams Avenue. This you can see there's a very narrow sidewalk here. There's some sidewalk condition issues that would prevent us from putting a bench or a shelter at that particular stop. In the middle on the bottom there, this is a shelter that's on Genesee Avenue in the Linda Vista area. It's fairly isolated in the canyon, but it's close to Mesa College. A lot of Mesa College students use this stop. We've had tremendous problems with vandalism at this location, and we see that in some of the more isolated areas where at a shelter like this, the glass would get broken fairly frequently. So this is actually a high maintenance and high cost area to have a shelter. Next to that on the right, lower right, you can see a bus stop that has tremendous amount of utility conflicts. So all those pretty painted boxes are all cable boxes, telecommunications, signal boxes, all kinds of utilities. There's probably some water meters and things like that. So in a place like this, it's very difficult for us to expand the sidewalk area in order to be able to put improvements there without also relocating a number of utilities, which is very expensive to do. And then right above that, this is a bus stop in the Oak Park area where the sidewalk is actually very, very narrow. The amount of right of way that we have to work with varies quite a bit by jurisdiction. In a lot of places in the city of San Diego, there's actually a 10-foot utility easement that we can use. I don't know if that's the case at this location or not. If it is the case, the adjacent homeowner has built a wall in within that utility easement. So the city would have the right to require them to remove that wall. It's not a location where the ridership is high enough that we're going to ask the city to do that here. They think that would not buy us any friends among the homeowners. So it's one of those situations where we just have to kind of work with, what's the best solution here? Is this a place where we need a bench so badly that we're going to actually ask the city to require the homeowner to remove their wall, remove it? So, and then the last one in the middle on the right, neighborhood feedback. This shelter here is in City Heights. There are some people sitting in the shelter. I grade them out. I'm not here to shame anybody, but we do have people that utilize our shelters for other than, waiting for the bus. And the problem that we see with that first of all, people that are riding the bus don't get to use it, that amenity, because there's other people that are utilizing it to just sit there. But the other issue is we get a lot of feedback from neighbors, and not in a positive way. My planners probably spend 25% of their time dealing with complaints about bus stops, people who want bus stops removed, people that want them relocated, et cetera. It's a very, very significant issue. We have 4,500 bus stops in our system, so you can imagine that's a huge number of touch points with local neighborhoods and local residents. So, and we try and look at every single one of those individually and work with the person. We've got some tools on our toolbox to, work with our operations folks, with our security folks to try and resolve some of the issues. But at the end of the day, we get a lot of feedback from people that just don't want these types of amenities either adjacent to their property or within their neighborhood. So we do try and work with that, but it's a sensitive issue. And we want to be a good neighbor. We want to have positive things for our riders, have a positive experience for our riders with clean and useful facilities, but at the same time, be a good neighbor to the other folks in the community. So that brings us to our main topic of discussion today, which is this draft scope of work or framework for this transit amenities study. So there are 6 primary tasks proposed for this transit study. The first is project management, which is standard for any project. So that's going to be meetings and invoicing, that kind of thing. The second task is public outreach. And in the public outreach, we're going to ask them to come up with an outreach plan and public engagement plan. So that will be right up at the front as part of the early part so that we can have that public engagement throughout the process. The third task is the current inventory. Again, we have over 60 rail stations, and we have a real good inventory of everything that's at all of our rail stations. About 4,500 bus stops. We know of all of our own furniture. We know all of our own benches and shelters and where they are. But among these 4,500 bus stops, things change out in the field quite frequently. So it's something we constantly have to keep on top of. So the first thing that we want them to do as part of that inventory is just to go through and make sure that everything that we have is up to date. Where other jurisdictions, other entities have put out benches and shelters or taken them out to make sure that we know what's out there today at every single stop. And another part of that is going to be what's the condition of the area? Is it ADA compliant? Can we put a bench or a shelter there right now and maintain ADA compliance, or would it need some capital improvements such as what you saw at Imperial Avenue at that bus stop there? And then we want to bring all of that into a format that we can put that into GIS maps. We can do analysis and that kind of thing with it. And task 4, we would like the consultant to look at the industry trends. What are other agencies doing, both in North America as well as around the world? What is successful for transit agencies? What are the different alternatives out there available in the amenities. What's the state of the art? So the result of this, or the deliverable for this task, will be a paper that will discuss all of the different options, what other agencies throughout the world are doing, that we might be able to take some lessons learned and even get some ideas from. And that'll lead into task 5, which is recommendations and cost estimates. Those are all listed in here. I won't go through all of this, but we'd like to recommendations that address inequities, improve passenger safety and security, of course, enhance the rider experience, because the ultimate goal is to attract new ridership with this. And then recommendations also looking at the value, looking at return on investment, how much do you spend for a low volume bus stop, that kind of thing. And then what are some limitations? What are the O&M costs and that kind of thing? Of course, we're always concerned about things like durability and maintenance. You don't want to put something out there where you've got to have a massive, massive team that goes out every day and does all kinds of maintenance work on these things. They should be durable enough to withstand being in an urban environment with a lot of use. And then the recommendations, we're going to ask that they be prioritized. So assuming that we're not necessarily going to have an unlimited budget to do everything that we want to do right off the bat, how do we prioritize this? And then the second part of that task will be the cost estimates. And then the final deliverable, the task 6 of the project, will be the actual transit amenities plan. So our concept at this point, if you'll recall, an original idea was to have a separate board subcommittee to look at this, an ad hoc subcommittee, and we decided that actually the executive committee was a perfect group to look at this, and that it's actually one of the purposes of the executive committee. So our concept is to come back at different points during this project and make sure that you're informed of where we are and what the process is. And in the meantime, happy to take any feedback on this as we look to develop a final scope of work to go off to bid.
Thank you, Dennis. Do we have any public comment on this thing?
We do not.
Okay. Well, we'll open up for committee discussion on this. Actually, feedback that you would like to offer. Director Book.
Yeah, thank you, staff, Dennis, for putting this all together. I think this is good, great framework. Just a couple questions on the third. Can you go over the third-party amenities, like how that works? So, is there potential for partnerships with these third parties to install shaded structures or have, I don't know, even like bathrooms, like porta potties for our workers in public? What's the limit or potential there?
Yeah, one of the things that, and you'll see this actually within task 5, is that we want them to look at potentials for private-public partnerships. And in fact, we see that
So
now.
that'll be part of the scope?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely. And we have a little bit of that now. A lot of what that is right now is the local jurisdictions, putting requirements on local developers to add amenities, or PIDs coming in and wanting to do it themselves. But we added the billboard, which is not necessarily a passenger amenity, but it's a revenue generating thing for the agency at Gaslamp. That recently went in. That's a perfect private public partnership example of how we can do that kind of thing. So we definitely have a structure for that, and we want them to look at that kind of opportunity.
And we're really proactive in seeking grant opportunities with those private entities. So for instance, we just recently helped a developer with Casa Familiar get an ASIC grant, which will actually put in new amenities for our transit passengers. So those kinds of things help us in a big way, to especially for the big construction projects, like where you have to put in a sidewalk or a retaining wall or any of that kind of stuff.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm really interested in that, and definitely like to follow the staff to see what our MOUs are for National City. One of the big areas that still want to push, that I think this section could be beefed up more, is the bathroom emphasis. And the bathrooms, again, I know that there's a cost for the maintenance for MTS for the bathrooms, and so, and I do think we, like for us in National City, I'm willing for us to put some public money into that. I also think the county should help with that cost, but the bathrooms, again, it's not just for the public, but even for our workers. I think the bathrooms, even if I'm okay if they're porta potties, like porta potties are better than nothing. So I think the bathroom section could be beefed up and highlighted and emphasized more. So that would be a comment there on the bathrooms. The shade structures, there's a nonprofit in Chula Vista that redoes when you cut down trees, I think they refurbish that into furniture and they do shade structures. So that's a potential I can get you guys connected with. So I think for a third party, that would be a potential there. And then just my only other thing you mentioned the vandalism could be an issue. And so I'm working with your staff on mural projects. So I think that's potential for art. The murals tend to decrease the amount of vandalism. So and I know there's something coming to the board next week on the mural project. So I know we're working with staff on the board street issues there. They're on both private property and some public areas. So, but otherwise, no, I think this is a great start. So I'm looking forward to seeing things through.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Gold.
Thank you, Chair. That is very thorough, as usual. Thank you. To Director Bush's point, do you consider public art part of an amenity?
It certainly could be. And I think that's, that might be something we can have them look at, when they look around the industry and what other places are doing, what's the value to that return on investment for that other agencies have seen? Is that drawn in new riders? Has that been a benefit to riders? That kind of thing. So certainly it's something that we can, have them look at in terms of, there's so many different amenities out there. They're going to have to prioritize. So where's that going to fall on the priority list? I think it certainly could be.
I would encourage you to have a consultant consider that.
Yeah.
For inclusion as an amenity, sculptures, murals, things like that. The new mural at the La Mesa station is absolutely fantastic.
Isn't it? Yeah.
I hope there's a graffiti treatment of some kind on top of that.
It's part of their contract is to maintain that. So they will constantly come in and repaint, and he finds he doesn't get a lot of vandalism. There's a respect amongst the artists, but.
Okay. The operations and maintenance for a second, is that considered part of the amenities plan, or is that a separate budgeted and operational item? How often and how these things are maintained?
So we have current contracts which have maintenance schedules and everything, but going into this, as we look at potential new amenities, the O&M costs are definitely going to be part of the costing that we'll ask them to do.
Sounds good. And specifically, I'm interested in power washing at bus stops.
Yeah.
Spilled food and drinks just can take the neighborhood down as well as the image of the
Of course. Yeah. Agreed.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Gold. Director Rivera.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation, Dennis. Appreciate the work on this. The first question or thing I'd like to add is making sure that the outreach piece of this is emphasized in whatever comes back to us. But that includes the inclusion of work already done by the social equity listening tour.
Yes, of course.
But also ideas for how to engage the community moving forward. Some other things I think would be really important to call out would be amenities that mitigate the impacts of heat. This is particularly important for seniors and small children. There's a correlation, there's multiple studies that demonstrate a correlation between heat and riding and whether or not there's shade. And to that point, I actually think that there's some opportunities to explore quick build options for multiple reasons. One, as we know, it can be very challenging to get some of the permitting required to do some of the more intensive capital work. But I think that there are kind of multiple benefits we could pursue at once with some quick build options. For example, large concrete planters with trees that provide shade, which is one of the best, if not the best way to reduce the impacts of heat or provide shade. And some of the sites that were shown there where you wouldn't necessarily be able to build something. I don't necessarily know why a planter wouldn't work in those places. So the quick build options, especially those that emphasize heat mitigation, would be really important to see for me. Love to see the ideas that come back from that, and kind of building on the third party partnership conversation started by Member Bush. I would love to see someone who comes back with some ideas to engage our universities. I saw some work in LA or work done with UCLA with some pretty innovative designs for shade structures in some of the very, very hot Inland Empire communities. And those were some of the designs that came from that. Also wouldn't require large capital investments. One of them was actually built with wood. It had excellent feedback from the community. So engaging our universities, I think, would be a good thing for us to do. We might see some innovation and again, multiple benefits at once through pursuing potential partnerships there. I think that is it.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, Director Rivera. Director Moreno.
Very happy to see this here before us today, and thank you for your work. And once again, I think we are very prepared, right, because of all the work that you guys have done previously. So kudos to you guys. One of the just to piggyback on the conversation about art, I think that's up to the board to decide. And it should be, I believe, if this is something that we want, it should be a board policy. I know the federal government, when the federal government spends money, 1% of that goes towards art. With the modification of San Isidro, modernization of San Isidro, 1% of that went towards art. So it definitely, we wouldn't be breaking ground here. The Port of San Diego as well has an art component to their infrastructure. So I think, as opposed to leaving it up to staff, I think we as a board should decide whether we want to start implementing that to our work. My question is, why is this not going to the board?
Well, I think this was just the decision to have the EC be the advisory body on this specific project rather than a separate subcommittee. Certainly, the approval of the consultant contract
Yeah.
would be a board approval item.
Yeah, I found it interesting because you're asking us to give feedback on the scope of work, which is kind of the meat of,
Yeah.
obviously you're hearing from committee members here that, what we want to see bathrooms was another one, but I would actually recommend, it's obviously it's up to the body, to have the board actually see this as an informational item to give their feedback. We have representatives from, throughout the whole, not the whole county, but a larger swath of the county, if you will. So that was one of my feedbacks.
We can certainly put it on next week's board meeting.
If we have time, I think that it would be to have a bigger discussion on what they want to see, because it's so important, the scope of work. It's going to be the frame of what we're asking this consultant to come and investigate, if you will. When will it be completed? The TAP, as we're calling it now, the TAP.
The transit amenities plan. So our goal would be to have them wrap this up by the end of next year.
By the end of next year,
By
so
the end of-
2025.
Right.
So they'll be presenting probably January 2026.
For the contract award would probably be early 2025. Oh, I see, to present the final plan to the board.
Present the final
Yeah,
plan.
yeah, and possibly even late 2025, maybe
Late
December.
2025, they'll come
Yeah.
in and show us their work
Yeah.
and what they think and what other,
But the goal would be, as they can complete some of these deliverables, we would bring that back
Right.
to this body as representatives of the full board.
okay. And based on what you guys have seen statewide, is this normal? Are other agencies doing this type of work? Or are we once again setting the frame for the future.
I think there's a wide variety. Yes, some agencies do have something that's very aspirational. But I think there's also a lot of experimentation going on right now. Councilmember Elo Rivera brought up some of the things they're doing in Los Angeles, and they actually, Los Angeles tried LA Metro, tried I can't remember what they called it, but it was essentially a big flag that they put on their bus stop pole, thinking this would be a quick way, and it was, you could turn it around so if the sun was facing in another direction. And the concept was that there wasn't a lot of cost to it. You could easily go out and put it a lot and it would provide instant shade. But it was actually pretty roundly criticized. I think there was a sense that there was a lot of inequity, that certain areas had nice big shelters and other areas got a metal flag on the pole. So there's been a lot of experimentation, for better or for worse, especially around California, I think. But a lot of agencies are it's different in how everybody's approaching this. Everybody's required to have this distribution of transit amenities policy. That's a federal requirement. So how far they're taking that just depends.
Well, my feedback for the TAP would be obviously the experience that bus riders have. You mentioned it, but the bus, the benches, the covers. Also, just as a side note, communication with the jurisdiction as to what is needed. I know that in Otay Mesa, there was, I want to say like 10 years ago, there was, I think Osvaldo did kind of an overview of what is needed in regards to the stops in Otay Mesa. Which we found out there needs to be sidewalks because Otay Mesa was not as developed as it is today. And so how do we communicate ways in which MTS communicates with the jurisdiction, what is needed to make sure that this comes to fruition? I know Citrus and Conifer off of Hollister is another one where there are a lot of riders, but it's an unimproved street in the city of San Diego. We've subsequently changed that racist policy. And so we can now build a street in Citrus and Conifer, which, as you said, is very expensive because it's not just the street, but how do we work together? Obviously, the representatives of the jurisdiction are a big component of it, but really nipping that in the bud, because I think that what we are seeing is, we're seeing really nice stops in La Jolla, right? And, right, this is fine, but this is my advocacy for my community, and we see trolleys in the sky, right? What I've heard in San Isidro, there's trolleys in the sky, and we always talk about in San Isidro that there isn't enough space. So I think it's high time that we put trolleys in the sky in San Isidro and other amenities like that futuristic not Flintstone, but the one. Jetson. Which that's what UTC looks, it's, amazing, right? It's just beautiful. And
we're working on that for San Isidro.
Thank you. But to go back to this, the TAP, I think that the experience that our riders have in the bus is paramount, as well as the riders in the trolley. I think short of security, a lot of folks talked about the actual boxes being inside of the trolley, being able to tap inside of the trolley was a discussion. And I think it was part of the scope of work, but I want to emphasize and I want to bring up is just really going back to basics with this. I'm a proponent of art. I'd love to see even half of a percent be, for art. But I think we really need to make sure that the communities that are in need of just basic shelter get it first before we look at making something. I know IB did the surfboard and that's really cool and they spent their money, but before we get to a surfboard, we need, the basic stuff to happen first. So the equity component for me is big. I would not that I'm East County, but it does get hotter out there. So I would advocate for a lot of shelter and a lot of just really thinking about folks' experience in East County and getting more people to ride is basically, if I were to have a thesis for this, is our number one thing is to get more folks onto our system? And how do we get to do that? So that would be my feedback. And, anything else? No. No, thank you very much for this work. This is really good, and I look forward to seeing the final production.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Moreno. Let's go back to Director Eva.
Thank you, Chair. Just one thing that I forgot, Councilmember Bush mentioned restrooms. Definitely want to push time on that. We did a little more research and we've seen some not porta potties, but prefabricated restrooms that are used by golf courses and certain parks. Some of them, they offer options that are not connected to utilities as well, but can go up to a couple months without needing the service. I would ask to have some creative options on that front as well, especially when it means providing restrooms in places where riders would otherwise have to go a very long way. Or if we see a high number of seniors or families with small children at those stops. Thank you.
All right, any other comments on this? I think the input on this has been great, and I think that the full board, I agree, would benefit from hearing this and having the opportunity to provide input. I know Director Dillard, subject of civic for. We have 4 other discussion items on the agenda for next week. 3 of them are informational. I'd love to get this in. We may have to rebalance,
I mean, short of somebody
You think
having
that-
a lot of questions on the consent, I think it's doable.
Okay, well, let's plan on that. And we'll look forward to continuing this next week then. All right, great discussion. Let's go ahead and move on in the agenda then. We don't need a motion on this, right? You got what you needed?
Correct.
Okay. Item 5 is a real estate and joint development program status update, and Sean Meyer is going to provide us with this presentation.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Sean Myatt, Manager of Real Estate Assets at MTS. We'll be doing the Joint Development Program Status Update. So I think the last time this body has seen a general update was about a year ago in September. So we've made some updates on what has gone on, and we'll cover all of our sites as well as some other opportunities that MTS was able to contribute some land to allow adjacent properties to go ahead and increase their development density around our transit areas. So the first slide is just a holistic overview. The red stars are the under contract sites. These are sites that we have a relationship with a development partner. We have 9 of those. You can see they're spaced mostly along, most of all of our sites are along our trolley stations or the trolley lines, because that's where we own the most land. But you can see the red star in the very far north is up at Rancho Bernardo at our Rancho Bernardo Bus Transit Center. The green stars, they're opportunity sites. These are sites that we don't have a partner with at the moment, but these are sites that staff over the years have analyzed the sites and decided that these sites would be good sites that could support both transit and, a potential development partner. And a little bit of a different twist. We added a different star this time to completed and occupied to show some of the historic ones that we've done recently and also reflect the recent completion at Grantville. So not every single star. I don't think I'll put 2 stars at Grantville there, but that's the general layout of what's going on here. So we're going to go through City of San Diego first, South Bay communities, and then the East communities, just because that's how we've done the last couple of slides. But let's, oops, too fast there. Okay. So what you're seeing here is the City of San Diego, the developments in the City of San Diego. So under contract, we have Rancho Bernardo. That's in construction right now. That is with the firm. We'll go through a little more of the firm project here on the next slide, so I'm not going to get to a ton of details here. We have 12th and Imperial, which is right downstairs, right where we sit at the 2 triangle parcels, the former Ace and Greyhound parking lot, now being used as MTS parking. That is also being integrated with our transit center expansion project that we're doing. Buyer Boulevard down at the southernmost part of San Diego. Palm Avenue has quite a bit of action going on recently. And then opportunity sites, we don't have slides for these. These are the sites, once again, that we do not have a partnership with. But at Euclid Avenue, we have a 2.5 acre site. We have to balance that. There are significant transit needs between buses and park and ride. So it would be, there's just a lot of transit there. So if we do go into development partnership, we'll have to preserve the transit there, and there'll be a lot of transit needs.
But I could mention to you that in the past, we've been in conversations with the Jacob Center, who has master planning in that area for their own parcels, and haven't talked to them in probably 5 years about it. But that's always out there as well.
Thank you. Yeah, we have our 47th Street trolley station, which you know is a potential for partnership, and then our Riverwalk site, which is currently landlocked right now and dependent upon the larger private redevelopment of the golf course and the Riverwalk area. So as that development continues to mature and grow and be built out, there'll be built-in roads and connections to us, as well as a trolley station will be placed in the Riverwalk on the green line there. So, and as that goes along, so that one's a little further out, but that's our opportunity sites. And then recently completed Grantville. I have some summary data here, but I'm going to hop to the next slide, and because we have a much better. There we go. So Grantville was recently completed. On the left here, you see the affirmed Shoreline branded affordable housing project, 100% affordable, opened in February 2024 this year, 126 homes. And that also included a collaboration with Affirmed and MTS for applying for a grant that got us $1.4 million for station improvements. So the landscaping, you'll see brand new landscaping at Grantville right now. And the paint of the actual trolley station, as well as the stairwells and the elevators there at Grantville. So that was part of that partnership with Affirmed. And so that is just about completed. The paint is almost done. And then on the east side here is the market rate side of the development. Our partner with Greystar for their Union Grantville development. This opened late 2023, 250 homes. This brings in approximately $740,000 a year in rent to MTS. And this is where the transit patron parking is. So if you do want to move into these events around the San Diego State area, or if you want to park and ride at the Grantville station, we do have park and ride capacity here. 100 transit replacement parking spaces are there. We're working with a marketing department to upgrade our signage. We've heard some initial feedback that it's a little confusing. Where do the transit patrons go? The residents know where to go, but the transit patrons never really, there's a little confusion. So we're going to update that signage there. So it'll be very clear to anybody who wants to go see a game at San Diego State or at Snapdragon, or just get on the trolley system there. There will be a very clear parking directions going in there. So those are recently completed. Those are up and running. That's great. Here we are talking about Rancho Bernardo. On the bottom left, you can see a construction update. This is from in August. This is the Skyline Affirmed Rancho Bernardo project. This will have 100 homes and approximately 14,000 square foot in office space. And that office space will be occupied by a firm, but it'll also bring in approximately $34,000 a year in rent and revenue to MTS. So once again, here we're also able to preserve some transit parking spaces on the southern lot. So 84 transit parking spaces reserved, and there you can see the 38 for the office and 76 parking spaces. Also, remember this site is bifurcated by George Cook Road. And so the north side of the lot, or if you look in this picture in the bottom left, we're looking south down the 15, but either way, the bus transit center is on the other side, and there is also additional parking there. So it's not just 84 parking spaces that is at this site. So there is currently parking there now, and there will be parking on the north side. We're in the lot, the surface lot, and there will also be parking within the residential and office community here at the Shoreline property. So we are looking at completion in early 2026 on this. So we have at 12th and Imperial, we've partnered with the San Diego Foundation, their philanthropic capital for housing. The most recent item that came to the board was in July for approved continued negotiation with Cypress Equity Investments. So San Diego Foundation went out and found a design partner, and the first partner they decided to partner with is the Cypress Equities Investments, and they are going to build in what you see is the purple or dark blue northeast corner on Imperial and 14th Street, and that is the portion that we are working with Cypress Equities and San Diego Foundation. We're working towards a disposition and development agreement, hopefully to get to the board back in later this year in October. And MTS and San Diego Foundation will continue to search for a development partner on the pink or the red, where something looking along the lines of like a podium over atop the expanded transit center, which is being built in harmony with the residential development. So the design teams are being put together in the same room, so we make sure we get a coherent development here. So just some quick stats on the North project. We have 160 homes and roughly 280 bedrooms. And this is the North project. That's the blue Cypress Equities project, in a mix of 1 to 3 bedroom homes. This will be 100% affordable. So the area median incomes they're targeting is 40 to 80%. And they're looking for completion in late 2027. The South concept is a little more not flushed out yet. We don't have a development partner, but we're looking for a possibility of 200 to 400 homes. And we're looking at a mix of workforce and market rate rents. Once again, built on a podium, and all of this is being built together with the transit center design. Buyer Boulevard, we've partnered with Affirmed Housing. This is the southernmost TOD that we have for 100% affordable, approximately 100 homes. And the last action was the DDA was approved in May of 2022. Here, once again, we reserve transit parking spaces. So this will take this building will take the east side of the lot, and the west side of the surface lot at Buyer will continue to remain MTS transit parking. We did have some design challenges. We wanted to preserve the historic railroad corridor for future large scale, like long range transit planning projects, to ensure that we don't put a building in the way of a future transit project. So we had the Affirm folks step back, and they did a really nice job in trying to pivot and redesign. So they're still looking to hold the 100 units, but the building footprint will expand a little to the west, and some parking may be rearranged to lost. So the next steps, we're continuing the funding search. Affirm is still applying for grants and different funding sources. Looking to finish the redesign. And depending upon the change in the units count, if there are change in the home count, we might have to come back to the full board for approval. Or
just to come, the way that the board's approvals work is that if there is a decrease by more than 10%, that it's a material change that has to come back to the board. If it increases in potential occupancy, or if it's within that kind of 10% bubble, then that's not considered a material change. And so staff.
Thank you. Moving further north at the Palm Avenue Station. Last time this came to the board was in December of 2023, where we amended the DDA similar to what may have to happen at the fire development. So the developer was able to, and in response to financial conditions and construction costs, they were able to redesign some of their building construction types, and so they were able to get costs down, but it did change a few things. So we brought it back to the board. So they ended up increasing density, which is great. Here they're doing some pretty interesting things. They're looking at integrating a childcare facility here. They got a grant to do a microgrid battery storage. And here the developer is also going to be working with MTS to install and maintain transit patron restrooms. So the interesting thing here, and we'll come back to this later, but this project in Southeast San Diego, there basically wasn't enough sewer infrastructure in the neighborhood, the entire neighborhood. So what Palm was able to do, the Palm team of National Core and Mailer, they were able to go out and get an infill infrastructure grant to bring about a mile of sewer down Hollister. So this construction will start later this year. And this is great, not just because it allows our Palm development to get off the ground, but it also allows the whole neighborhood. So basically multifamily housing in that Palm and Hollister area wouldn't help, would not be possible if not for this grant from the state and if not from our partnership with the folks at Palm, at National Corps. Okay, so ground lease late in 2024, phase 1 construction in mid 2026. And then the utility construction, they're going to do a lot of utility construction. So you'll see a lot of construction going on. We'll have phasing plans, but parking will still remain. While we're doing it, we'll do kind of the first half, the south half, and the north half. We're working with the developer on phasing of that. Okay, moving to the South Bay. We have, once again, the red are the stars of the under contract sites and the green are the opportunity sites. So we have a notice of interest from the National Corps Malik team, same as the same team as at Palm, for our 24th Street station, as well as our Palm station. That was under the Surplus Land Act notification. We have a big update at E Street, which I think you'll be excited to see here in a slide here. That's a joint development with the city of Chula Vista. The Bayview Point is the lead developer. And one of our opportunity sites is the H Street site. So we do not have a development partner here. And if we do work on it with a development partner, we would want to, there's a significant parking. This is a big, high volume park and ride area. So this parking lot is packed. So we will need to figure out how to retain that park and ride capacity for transit needs. So the H Street site also requires a Surplus Land Act notification. So
We weren't ready yet to say that that's surplus land because we might need it for transit uses. And so when the board did its kind of mass programmatic Surplus Land Act, findings back in 2020, we did not include this site on that one. So before we do anything, we have to adopt the, Surplus Land Act and move forward. But that's one we're just still not sure, that we're afraid if we gave this away to a TOD developer, that then we would have a lack of our transit needs. So, it's making sure we don't give too much where then we can't serve the community.
Transit needs just parking?
But it's significant bus transit
Buses.
center, and so, if we wanted to, if we took it away, not only do we have parking, but we also have that, then we wouldn't be able to expand to the transit connection. So, that's one, we've got it on this list, but I'm not sure that the board would want to make that a TOD site because it might be a site that it wants for a future expanded transit center. Another thing that, at some point the board may decide it wants to do, commuter parking, projects, where, because we've lost, parking at some of our other sites along the South Bay, would the board want to go see if we can get a grant to build a larger transit parking, garage that then people that live in the South Bay, that's the location that they can drive and be more assured that there's gonna be a parking spot available for them and they can take the blue one.
Well, it's also the connector to Southwestern College
Yeah.
also, right? So and the future, probably the future.
Yes. So that's one where we've got it on the list, but there's a little bit of an asterisk, because, again, we don't want to go too fast in the TOD program and then have MTS not be able to kind of serve the community.
Buy back its land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That can't take off $100 million
Tear the building
building
down.
off of it,
Can't buy back.
so.
You can't. And didn't sense.
right, yeah. So just to elaborate on that, the transit or board policy 18, I'll paraphrase, says transit first. So which is what Karen basically said. So that's in line with our current board policy. So this is a very fresh update at E Street here. This is with Mountain West Real Estate. They formed a group called Bayview Point. And this is what you can see here on the right or the south on F Street is a city lot in the kind of blue area that is 100% owned by the city. And we have the lot on the north on E Street, and that's currently is our E Street transit station. So we have transit parking there already. We have the coffee shop there, which does have the public restrooms or the transit patron restrooms, and also then, the station and the bus interface there. So this is a joint development. We partnered with the city of Chula Vista, and we worked through all of this. You can see some of the different priorities that happened in the RFQ and RFP process. The city was looking for a little more office, hotel, and retail, and MTS, the board priorities I mean, outside of transit, of course, were affordable housing, market rate housing, office, hotel, and retail. So the list was sort of flipped, so the developers had, had quite the fun time trying to, meet both masters, so to speak. But we think they did a really good job here. So I'll just do a kind of quick overview. So on the lot 1 on E Street is a proposed lot for affordable housing. And what they're looking at now is approximately 130 homes with about 65 residential parking areas. And then moving a little further south is the transit center. So it's kind of the transit center basically stays the same. The buses come in off of Woodlawn and then make a loop around the transit center. But what the developer has envisioned is a parking garage there. To remove that parking in the other areas for the affordable housing and everything to kind of activate the site. So they have come up with 100% transit replacement parking. So there's 246 spaces out there now. They're going to replace 240 in a parking garage. So that's their proposed plan. And also you can see there's a lot of green space. So there is the lot D, the linear park that runs parallel with the existing trolley tracks. And the reason this was constructed this way, one, the park is a great amenity for all the residents in the community as well. These park spaces are going to be public and open to the public, but it also does preserve the grade separation project that is for E and the surrounding stations, that for the E Street stations to put the trolley in a trench. And so at that point, the linear park would turn into the trolley line, and then the currently pink trolley station or red or trolley line would then turn into the linear park. This is dependent upon kind of very long-term funding, but the point is once again, we did not want to build a whole bunch of buildings, then all of a sudden, get in the way of a future transit project. So continuing south, moving on to the city lot, there is a 1 acre park that'll, is under development and design, but that's set aside. There's a lot 3, the light blue there is the commercial opportunity building, approximately 4 levels there. That will probably tie into this lot 6, the big lot on F Street, which is a hotel lot. For 300 key hotel room of 13 levels. And this is really, going back to those priorities, the city prioritized hotel, office, retail, things like that. And so you can see that was, the developer did a really good job of trying to meet all those. And then moving on to the 2 yellow lots, lot 4 and lot 5. One is I can't read all that. One is a 24 level, 250 home residential for sale condominium, envisioned as condominium tower. And then lot 5 is the 140 units, once again, for rent. And these would be the market rate areas. So they were able to do a good job of balancing. So you have, on this site, you have, everything from a dog park to a linear park to an acre park, to transit parking, affordable hotel, and, then market rate residential here. So this is one of the newer updates.
And the city is, right now, their requirements are that ultimately we bring a DDA, it probably will be a 3-party DDA between MTS, the city, and the developer. It's statute, we got a special statute, under the Surplus Land Act for us to be able to do this joint development with the city. And so within that statutory authority, we have to have a DDA by the end of 2027. But really what was holding us up, bringing more substantive deal to the 2 agencies to approve, was finalizing this site plan. And then especially, like, we kind of threw them a curveball of, we realized that their footprint had been in the area that's going to be needed if we do future grade separation, which that's a community priority, especially along the South Bay Blue Line, because if we ever go to 5-minute frequencies on the Blue Line, then that will really cause congestion at all those, grade crossings. And so the last thing we wanted to do was have our TOD program forget that and build in that footprint. So we told them, wait, you guys have to go back. We need to work with the grade separation teams and figure out what's the envelope that we need to be able to get into and build in if those projects go forward. So that had them do a little bit more redesign, which we've got here. So they are now pricing out and doing their financial analysis. And so we're really hoping that those kind of DDA related negotiations will move much more quickly And so we could see something come back either at the end of this year or very early in 2025 to have a DDA, to have them move on then to start funding. And just one other thing about the transit center parking garage, they also plan to include as part of that facility, the ground floor of that parking garage is very few parking. It's mostly the transit center where you make the bus connections, and there also will be a transit patron restroom, and then there will be a transit employee restroom and break room, and so they'll be kind of separated on each side of that area. So the design, we didn't have one of the mock-ups of what their proposed kind of architectural design, but it looks really nice, very elevated.
Yeah, very, very green. And they also did a very good job. And one of the reasons for the delay in this redesign is they worked very well with the bus and transit folks here, with Dennis and myself and everybody, to try and make sure that the transit priority, the buses coming in and out have priority when it comes to circulation. So we don't need to add any more extra time here. So they're putting in things like bus only lanes and looking at, signal prioritization and bus turn only lanes. So to get the buses in and out, because this site's going to have a lot more activation. Imagine everybody checking out of their hotel on a Sunday morning around 10 or 11 o'clock. There's going to be a bunch of cars and Lyfts and Ubers and different things, and everybody trying to get in and out of there. So they did a good job of working with our planning and transit folks.
Hopefully they're taking the shuttle.
Right. Well, to the airport too.
Yeah. And then just one other kind of neat feature about this is that little lot 8 part that you can see just above the red box. That is extra parking that MTS owns, is in there, and they're proposing that will turn into a dog park. So. And the developer would, maintain all, we would be responsible for maintaining the dog park.
So there's a lot going on here. This, it's pretty, very fresh. This came in just last week from the development team. So, and the city of Chula Vista will be updating their council members as well on this, on their time. So that takes us through the South Bay areas, and now moving a little further east. So we have the El Cajon Transit Center. That's a joint development with the city of El Cajon. We partnered there, and we partnered in a 3-way partnership with Chelsea and the city of El Cajon. Out at La Mesa, we have opportunity sites at 70th Street and Amaya. Amaya has some challenging utility things, utility under infrastructure there. But at Spring Street, we do have an exclusive negotiation agreement with.
We should have a DDA. We should have updated that side. Sorry.
Oh, my apologies. Yes, we have a DDA with the firm. Out in Lemon Grove, we have the Massachusetts State Station, and that is an opportunity site we're doing development partner. Jumping to El Cajon, we've partnered with Chelsea Investment Corporation, and this is their early site plan here. We have 146 affordable homes. They're working to try and create the second building to the north in the kind of blank white space. Hasn't been completely planned out yet, but what they're looking at is approximately 177 workforce homes. And then in replacing all of the transit parking, or sorry, not all the transit parking, but they have proposed to move a lot of the transit parking to the southwest on the other side of the trolley tracks in a transit-only parking garage. So they're looking at 210 transit parking spaces. Overall, 143 will be in the parking garage, and this meets the MTS transit parking needs here, part of the future study that was done by the planning department and MTS, and negotiated with the city and with the developer. This will also include a bus driver break area in the development. And then to remind the folks that there are public or transit patron restrooms at the convenience store at the A-Mart there at the station already. So that's why the developer is not looking at that at the moment. But the next steps, the developer is to pursue funding and finalize design on what they're doing here. So they're still early on in the process, as they don't have any funding committed or won any awards for this. So they're working towards grant applications, so on and so forth.
And this one, kind of Sean's last slide, will kind of update you on kind of some of the challenges for some of our affordable projects, especially the ones that then have to do some replacement infrastructure for MTS. And so that has, like, the recent budget changes at the state kind of stalled this project a little bit. And we're trying to get back on track now.
yeah, you'll see the theme here. Looking for funding is definitely in the next steps for most of these projects here. So out at Spring Street in La Mesa, we partnered with Affirmed and they're working on their development there and for 152 homes and 277 bedrooms. The DDA was completed in October. And we have 159 transit parking spaces. So we work with them to make sure the transit parking needs are still met. They'll have residential parking spaces. So there'll be a little bit less there. But also here, they included the construction and maintenance of a transit patron restroom and a bus driver break area. So that'll be integrated into the future transit, to the future residential development here. So where exactly it all goes, but the idea, we prioritize those areas where the closest to the transit center. So the transit patrons can get to the transit patron restroom, so the bus drivers can have a break room, so they don't have to walk to the far end of the development. So the next steps here, the developer pursuing funding, and as we said, and then they're proceeding to a ground lease. So yeah, like Karen alluded to earlier, funding challenges at the state. I don't think this is a surprise to anybody. A major source of affordable funding is from the state of California. The state underwent some significant budget cuts this year. And many programs were cut, but one of the ones were some of the cuts were affordable housing. Well, there's too many things to talk about when it comes to affordable housing, but I'll key on one of them later. But just quickly, two things that did stay, which is helpful for affordable housing, is the LIHTC program, the low income housing program for $500 million. That requires an annual approval by the state. So that did end up being kept in the state budget. So we were helpful in that. The early drafts of the state budget had that gone, so that was able to be retained. ASIC, as Sharon mentioned earlier, affordable housing and sustainable communities, that is not affected by some of these state budgets. It has a dedicated funding source from the California Climate Investment, utilizing kind of the cap and trade program. So that is still there. And we've worked with our other agencies and our other places. ASIC has our challenges because when they go through and score grant funding applications, they're looking at gross ridership. So you're competing against everybody else in the state. So the San Francisco region, the Los Angeles region, they do have set asides for the San Diego County area, but sometimes going up against just the gross, ridership of, the Los Angeles and San Francisco area makes ASIC a little bit of a challenge, but nonetheless, our partners are still getting that. And there is a San Diego County set aside. So the kind of take home message here is, there is still funding available, but the pie got smaller at the state. So one of the key reductions we want to talk about is the infill and infrastructure grant. And this is what Palm and at Palm Avenue, National Corps was able to get the infill and infrastructure grant to bring about a mile of sewer down Hollister, which helped the entire neighborhood. So that was a key thing. And that was reduced by $235 million in this year's budget. So the money is not gone in IIG. There's approximately, $500 million remains to be allocated in the IIG program, but it probably means that the trickle of money will, instead of a larger flow, it'll probably get a lot smaller. We'll see how that goes from the state. That's up to the state to make those decisions. But trying to figure out what 235 million in cuts means, I wanted to kind of bring some perspective. So there's still, 500 million remaining in allocations for IIG funds. So at Palm, the number that they got to bring that infrastructure down is $17 million.
Wow.
Yeah, they did a really good job getting it, and that'll help the entire community. And then just one other number to put it into reference, the largest award by IIG was 240 million, and that was round 10 in August of 2023. So every round is different depending on state budget.
That wasn't one individual award, that was just.
Correct.
the program.
Yes, that's the entire thing for the entire state. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you for the context. I appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah, so in one round, they gave everybody in the state 240 million, but in the early years of IIG, it was 30 million for the entire state and 40 million for the entire state. So we'll see how that continues on. So, and then the way this, works is one of the, as Karen alluded to earlier, out at El Cajon, Chelsea was looking at IIG funds to build the transit parking garage. So they've had to pivot since that has been significantly reduced. And so they're trying to come up with basically plan Bs and Cs when it comes to funding strategies and going out and getting that type of funding. So.
And just kind of reiterating the importance of parking, I know we did the study and things like that, but we've actually had some real life, in operation experience with parking with the success of the Mid-Coast. And, Sandvik built 2 parking garages up there, and the Noble Drive parking garage. It's a 5-story parking garage. Part of it is replacement parking for the retail mall, and part of it is for MTS. And we have had significant number of complaints from our customers that they go there and it's already full, like early in the morning. That there's not enough parking. And so it's, I think there is some, Dennis probably knows more, some people coming south, but there's a lot of people that are wanting to go to the VA hospital, to UCSD, to those areas and parking at Nobel and then taking their trolley from there. And in the different hospital complexes around. And so like we've had lots of complaints and are trying to come up with strategies to see if we can leave some spaces from the malls area or things like that. But it really has shown that people will ride transit if there's a parking space for them, and so it's reaffirmed that we do want to not lose, like, if we look at those kind of locations, we need to like make sure that we provide, enough parking. So it's how can we work with our developer partners to kind of put that justification in writing and like make this the grant people understand that this is a really important ability of if you want to be able to increase affordable housing, if you want to be able to kind of catalyze development around transit stations, one of the things that we will need is the funds to, basically make the parking go vertical instead of be just horizontal on a certain slot.
Okay, and then all of this data is publicly available. So MTS has a website here for our real estate properties. So if you didn't see a slide on the opportunity sites, but somebody in your neighborhood or your jurisdictions that is interested in some of those, you can direct them to the MTS real estate properties website where you get a simple one sheet. And of course, you can always reach out to MTS staff, but all of this is online and publicly available data. We keep this up to date as we move along through the projects. And here's the kind of overall big board. The green is a little more recent numbers. So you can see Marina Linda Vista, that's at the Marina Station in Linda Vista. So that was built out in 2007. So MTS has a history of doing all of this, a long history of doing these transit-oriented development projects. So to go through every single number would kind of be a bit much. So we'll just go through the ones that change. So the affirmed Grantville project just opened, so that moved from under construction to now occupied. 126 units are occupied. At Palm, we were able to get an increase they were able to increase their density, so the 406 represents that 15 or 16 unit increase. Rancho Bernardo, those moved into construction here since our last update back in last September. And then there are some updated numbers at the E Street Station, which changed quite a bit from the initial design. So they're at 520 total housing units, 130 for rent restricted affordable. At El Cajon, we're looking at 323, 100%. Yeah, affordable units there. And then the Imperial site, 12th and Imperial site downtown, the San Diego Foundation of 160 plus. So right now meeting with Cypress Equities, and we'll see what this phase 2 podium can or cannot bring in. So just left it like that. But overall, MTS has either in production or in under agreement or in planning, we've approximately 3,000, homes there on our site. So this is kind of a good overview. There's a lot of question marks here when it comes to Riverwalk, Euclid, and Massachusetts, some of these other stations. So we hope to fill in those as we continue on with this program. So real quick, this is an update from last time. These are 2 property actions that MTS took that benefited not MTS developments, but for adjacent developments. So out on Woodman Street on the Encanto neighborhood, MTS completed the sale in September 23. We have property with substation on it, had a little excess land. And so we were able to sell that property to the neighboring developer who happens to be looking at doing an affordable development there, 65 affordable homes. They're applying for tax credits in 2025. So not an MTS development, but a property action that benefits the neighborhood, kind of a win-win. Extra land we didn't need, sold to the neighboring developer. And the same thing with 580105 Fairmont Avenue. It was property that MTS acquired when the Green Line was created. MTS has been leasing it out. The most recent tenant was this auto auction. As you can see here from the street view, if you go by there now, you'll see it completely repainted. The new owner has repainted it and has a new tenant in there. But the owner, we sold it to the neighboring property to the north. This sale was completed in May of 2024. And in their long-term plans in the Grantville area is to go ahead and put in housing development there. So this is housing that we couldn't use. It's too small of a site. It's obviously constrained with the overhead guyway. So we retained all the easements we need for all of our infrastructure, but then we sold this. This is also subject to realignment of the Alvarado Canyon Road in the city of San Diego. So there's a lot of uncertainty here, but so the best place for this property, instead of MTS just leasing it out and, to a tenant relationship where we weren't putting a lot of money into the building, we got it into private hands and created a larger parcel to the neighbor to the north. And so they can create a larger, more dense development, which will feed into the Grantville station and the Grantville neighborhood. So I know I've covered a lot of ground. Are there any questions or comments?
Sean, good update. You have any?
We do not.
Okay. We'll begin our committee discussion with the book.
And thanks for the updates. I'm curious on the 24th Street Transit Station. Where is that? Can you give updates on where that's at? And it's interesting because we just approved a general plan update. And one of the proposals was to transfer the density away from that site. So why we oppose that? So I probably should have been in better contact with you all about that because I'm not sure if you guys even knew about that, but that did go through.
There's no significant, just kind of for our staff, kind of just capacity needs and things like that. We haven't started any in-depth negotiations, but under the Surplus Land Act, when you make your notices that these properties are available, if the developer within 60 days submits a notice that they're interested in that, then we have an obligation to negotiate with them first. And so that is what National Ford did with the 24th Street site and the Palomar site. And so we have basically said, we've acknowledged their notice of interest and that when both of our teams are ready to start negotiating on that, then we'll first negotiate with them. And so we haven't, National Core, we've been more focused on let's get Palm squared away and off, and all these projects are also competing with each other for funding. And so it's kind of staged, but so certainly it would probably be for us to circle back with the National City teams, if there's something you want to connect with to understand kind of what their thoughts and needs are, because we really haven't even scoped of like, what are our exact transit needs there? And, what is the developer's concept there? But we are committed that when we're ready to talk about that site, that we will first start those negotiations with National Core.
Okay, well, I'll have our staff connect you to, I think it's going to be Carlos Gutierrez, probably Martin Reeder from the planning department. So it'd be good to get you. Who's the staff in contact with?
Sean.
Sean. Yeah, I'll get your contact.
There are significant transit needs there. We redeveloped the old transit center during our trolley renewal project. We have a lot of bus routes going in there, and it's a very busy station, as you know. And then there's the school on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And so
There seems to be super underutilized. I don't even know if it's operating. There's issues there.
well, we own the property, so we wouldn't mind taking it back from them. If that's the goal. And then obviously there's other businesses that are right adjacent to it. So they need to have access to the roadway.
What would timing be for 24th Street?
I
2
don't-
to 3 years?
Yeah, I think, if we wouldn't start talking to them about it sometime in 2025. So, I think our first thing would be to get with our transit folks and be like, what's our long-term, long-range plans at that site? Is it even one that we would want to do a TOD at, or is it another one of those of, there's not really enough space for us to give up to make it worth it, And so not waste anybody's time having the developer dream up something that takes away all these things that would be a non-starter for us. And so that's kind of our first step. And then again, Palm is moving along well. So I think we're almost ready to be like, okay, National Core will shift and talk to you about a different project now. But I think we wanted to focus on let's do one project right before we start multiple ones.
And we have a final question. We have an exclusive negotiating agreement with National Core for the 24th Street Station.
We do not have an exclusive negotiating agreement, but under the Surplus Land Act, we have a legal obligation to exclusively negotiate with them first. So it's kind
Got
of, when you do under that project process, you don't necessarily do our special agreement, though. Under that, if they came to us for whatever like funding needs and said, hey, we think we need an exclusive negotiating agreement, we'd probably execute because we would just craft it to be acknowledging we have an exclusive obligation to negotiate with you under the Surplus Land Act.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Moreno.
Well, what an exciting time to be on MTS, right? So, congratulations to Karen and Sean. You've obviously been a wonderful addition to the team. This tremendous work. One of the things that I knew there was something missing about the transit amenity plan. Hate to point this out. I know it was a previous item, but when Palm Avenue first came, we did not have any, rule or we weren't thinking about the parking at all. And that was something that I brought up because we do have transit parking spaces on Palm Avenue. They were really important because I know that it's a very important stop. So if we could add that to the scope of work to the TAP, I think for us to be looking at our transit riders who H Street is a perfect example. There's a ton of people who come from East Lake, drive down to the trolley, park their car, and then jump on the trolley up north. I know my family does it for baseball games all the time. And kudos for thinking of H Street and Karen. I think that's really important because what do we need to expand, right? We're asking you guys, we're pushing you guys to have more ridership, to develop more routes, but we need space for these buses and what does the future of transit look like? I think that's just very forward thinking. And so I just wanted to say congratulations. This is really exciting and I look forward to a lot of the housing that's getting funded, especially obviously in District 8. I know we're taking a big chunk of that. But yeah, I wanted to add the transit amenity plan should consider transit parking spaces for transit riders.
So we did do the transit parking study about 2 years ago, which established or estimated our future needs in 2035, what all of our parking would be. So that's sort of the basis for the start of negotiations with all of these is this is what we estimate we're going to need in 2035. And then each site is a little bit different and, that has impacts on what can be built there. So if we need to dust that off and, take a fresh eyes at it.
Reference it,
Yeah,
right? The
Yeah.
plan should reference it so that the future
Yeah.
knows that this was something that was considered
yeah,
because
for sure.
if we're gonna build our transit riders, not all of them live.
Absolutely.
There's the whole
Yes.
whatever half mile issue and
Yeah,
a lot of people deal with that issue by parking in our. A
right.
lot of our customers deal with that issue
Right.
by parking at our parking facility, so definitely things to consider. And really exciting to see East Street, that is definitely an underutilized space. And the other thing that is really apparent is these are really confined spaces, right? And MTS is maximizing on those spaces and considering our future needs. So just kudos to you guys all around, very exciting.
We're certainly excited about East Street because with the City of Chula Vista's Bayfront, Convention Center project, that is kind of one of the, gateway stations to access, that. And so, we want all of our developments to be amazing, but this one, I think the city was pushing everyone to go big as well. So that it really is this like huge, exciting kind of welcome, like station to that new
One-
development.
One development we did not include was the Claremont Station, which was part of the negotiations on the land acquisition for the Midcoast. That's still in Sandag's hands.
Yeah.
And they're under the gun because they have to build the parking as part of their FTA full funding grant agreement. So I guess stay tuned to see what ends up happening.
Yeah, for a while, again, all these projects were moving really fast and then all of a sudden they've just all stalled. So I think that there was a lot of money flowing for grants to fund them. And then with all the uncertainties of the state and the programs pulling back, there's like multiple ripple projects where they thought they were gonna be under construction next year. And now they didn't get grants to fully fund their projects, this year. And so now they're kind of to square one of trying to strategize it. So hopefully, I think as we're learning, you know, I'm just crafting and I know we've gotten kind of generous offers from our board members to like, if there's kind of legislative, you know, or advocacy that you all can do. I think that's kind of something that Sean and I will probably think about over the next 6 months of what is our lesson learned, what some of the justifications to advocate for this funding, you know, especially with parking garages and replacement parking. It's so counterintuitive to, we want to get people out of their cars. And so why are you reducing parking minimums at other places and encouraging people to ride transit, but you're saying transit needs to build parking? And so as we go through this experience, I think we'll maybe a little bit better articulate that justification of, you know, parking for transit actually does get people out of their cars and into
Yeah.
transit. And so it's not the same thing as building everything else completely around parking, you know? And so how do we craft that message where it resonates and then like creates funding for these programs?
Well, and back to Palm Avenue, when I was advocating for parking, I felt like the enemy, right? Like, what do you need parking for transit? Isn't that, you know, counterintuitive? But we have customers that we need to fulfill their needs and we want to make sure that they ride. So can we also, an advocacy part of it, I think, is you mentioned something about can we go back to the LITAC slide? That could be, you mentioned that the city of San Diego has its carve out. But that could be an area where we advocate for the carve out for the city of San Diego, because the pie got smaller, because we're doing these projects. Just some food for thought.
I think,
County of San Diego.
With that.
yeah.
It's a San Diego County,
yeah.
carve out.
Oh, yeah, from the state of California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, from the state of California has its pot of funding. The pot of funding goes to different areas. Obviously, because you said the ridership is based on money, then LA and Sacramento get more money, but we get a carve out, but our carve out is small. And I said city, and I apologize, I meant county.
Yeah.
That's, I think, especially because these projects, I think, really are going to, they're gonna need that.
Yeah.
And if that's not available for us, so
Well, I
that
think
can be.
it would be good for us to kind of work with some of our current development partners to kind of understand where they were looking for funds, where now the options are, what are programs that we could advocate that the state should restore or add more money to. Maybe put together something that then we can share with the board members of like, you know, as we go. And then, you know, obviously Sharon and Julia are really involved with CTA that puts together their own kind of legislative advocacy programs.
And we partner with housing advocacy groups that really are
So
focused.
That's gonna be a big fight.
Yeah.
But it's a fight we should be having.
Yeah.
Because we need it.
So I think that that's, again, over the next 6 months, we've learned so much over the last 2 years of our program, and we've kind of seen where some of the roadblocks have been, and so I think we'd like to kind of, how do we put all that knowledge in writing and like turn it into kind of change?
How much money comes in to MTS based on the funding? The rent?
I mean, I guess I would say very little, because
A
our
million?
board made,
No.
for market rate, we get a fair amount, you know, so, you know, market rate is about $600,000 to $700,000, you know, per market rate project.
How
We've
many
got something-
projects do we have?
We've got Grossmont,
Marina Linda Vista.
Grossmont, Marina, Linda Vista, yeah.
And-
62nd and Canto was an affordable project.
So
we
we're
have-
getting under 5 million.
oh, yeah, and then for all of our affordable projects, we basically we get nominal revenue because we kind of are giving that land value or rent in exchange for some of the other requirements, the replacement parking, the, you know, prevailing wage and, you know, skilled labor requirements, the other things, you know, adding restrooms, those all kind of take away where there might have been a pot of money, but our board has made the policy judgments that we want these other things more.
I'm curious to
So-
find out though, how much money does come into MTS based on
Yep.
rent and
Yeah.
whether they go to the general fund or are they?
I think it's
earmarked?
under 2 million.
Okay.
Yeah. But we
If you
can,
just use the joint development projects, it's under 2 million a year.
Thank you, great job, you guys. Thanks.
You bet, Dr. Maria.
Commissioner Gold, thank you. When these developers are penciling these projects, do they have to pay development impact fees to the appropriate cities?
I honestly don't know. I think it depends on the city. So we don't have anything to do with that, you know, and so as Sean and I both get into it, we're learning our side of the development deal and we're learning with each project a little bit more the other one, so I can find that out, but we require our development partners to just go through the controlling jurisdictions for planning and permitting. And so their project gets, permitted and whatever fees are paid are based on how that city has set that up. And so I just honestly don't know if the cities have exemptions of certain impact fees for certain types of projects, but it wouldn't, there's nothing special that MTS is able to exempt them from. It's whatever the underlying zoning is at that agency.
I think it's very important to know. I'm emphasizing very important to their party. Because it allows each city to perhaps waive that fee, that will help land that project. And with development impact fees can be $20,000 to $40,000 a unit, you're talking millions of dollars. And if you were to say to a city, look, the thing we need to get over the hurdle to the finish line is $5 million, you may have a discussion with the jurisdiction to say, are you willing to waive development impact fees for this project to get it done? And that's a very important thing for MTS to know.
Well, the cities themselves could also, for instance, build the sewer lines to create the infill. The cities could redo the sidewalks, but the cities have their own challenges with funding. I don't see MTS really swaying those kinds of decisions. Unless the cities, the councils themselves wanted to say, let's do this.
Well, I understand what you're saying. I'm also saying if something was going to go to a city and the hurdle is relatively small, MTS could say to the city, this will be great for your neighborhood if you're willing to do this to get it across the finish line. It's kind of a, we've got the land, you've got some of the purse strings. I'm just saying that.
No, we absolutely can do that. And again, it's, as we get deeper into these, we get more, and we've left it for our partners. If they know, if there's something we can help them with, they can come tell us what the issue is, and that we have relationships with cities and other things. And so we can advocate, but we haven't kind of done the reverse of like, tell us where your costs are, and, where are areas where you would want to ask for this to be waived, and it may be something that we know the city needs that funds, and there is gonna be an impact from that development, and so you can't exempt it, but at least like one more knowledge piece for us to be involved in, and make sure that they know that that's an area that we're open to discuss and have.
I think it's important at least to have that knowledge.
Yeah.
When you have the discussion, it's case by case. Alcohol is the only city that doesn't have development impact fees. So if we're talking 320 units at an average of 20 to 40,000, we're talking somewhere between $6 and $9 million. That developer, Chelsea, would not have to pay El Cajon, that they might have to pay another jurisdiction if they have those fees.
Yeah.
And I'm a little frustrated. Chelsea doesn't seem to be valuing that. They seem to be pressing, well, we can't go forward because we're $8 million short for a parking garage. And I'd say we just waived $8 million in development impact fees if you're paying that to another city. So what is your complaint? So my question is, do you think Chelsea is still a good partner? Should their exclusive negotiating agreement expire March 25th? They're the only ones. I mean, Affirmed, Graystar, National Core, Nalick, Bayview Point, Mountain West, they're getting things done. And Chelsea, the only one who's not getting it done. Because they say, well, we're stuck on an IIG grant. How did National Core and Nalick get 17 million in an IIG grant for Palm? But Chelsea can't get an $8 million grant for alcohol. There is inequity east of the 15th.
Well,
Alcohol is the second poorest city among the 18 for median income. And I'm advocating for those people.
well, that's good for us to hear, because we would be glad to open that discussion with the city. And just say, maybe we need to revisit who we're partnering with on this site.
I mean, we can certainly then put there were a lot of unknowns in like March and June when the budget came out, but now it's like, what the budget is. And so you have to, like, what is gonna be your financing plan? So we certainly can let Chelsea know as if we don't have this like refined enough to bring something to our board by March, where, you think you can put together a plan, then we're likely gonna let that ENA expire out again.
Yeah, and as we linger on one of these projects, my big fear is the state's situation and the federal situation is not gonna get better. It could get worse. And so we might end up losing out on developing one of our properties because that pot of money goes away, or just as this grant program gets diminished.
And MTS had, this is great for the agency, all these developments. This is good. I'm just frustrated why Chelsea just seems to be hung up over a couple $1 million for a long time. And I question their commitment and their effort to an area that 320 units is the, of all the projects up there, it's the 5th largest. And they can do both. They can do the affordable part and we even agreed to downgrade market to workforce housing.
Yeah.
Just so that Chelsea could do them both. We're making tremendous concessions. And I would like you to push with Chelsea, say what is going on, what is holding you up?
Yeah.
Alcohol ways development companies. Are you paying them elsewhere? Why aren't you taking pound? That's my scope.
Okay.
For MTS and by having 20,000.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vice Chair Gold. Great stuff. Real win-win, housing and transit. I also want to thank you for the focus on parking. I mean, for so many riders, transit is only a park and ride proposition. And we need to make sure that we are making transit feasible for as many people as possible. And I think that you were telling me that in some areas up by northern part of the blue line, the people who would use transit have said that they would use transit were it not for the fact that they have trouble finding parking.
Yeah.
So we need to make it as easy. I mean, if we're going to increase ridership, we got to do what we need to do to make sure. So I know parking could be expensive for these developers, and we want the housing, but we're here to get people on buses and trolleys. To that point on East Street, the garage, which is great, is that parking no charge? Do we have a mechanism to, or?
Ultimately, they will build that that transit center and parking garage and turn it back over to MTS to own and operate. So, we would be in charge, we will have kind of inherent in this, the added maintenance costs of maintaining a garage instead of a flat surface parking lot. And these projects generally can't then have the developer pay us to maintain it, especially if it's not shared. And so we kind of assumed that that's an ongoing cost that ultimately MTS will take on when it comes back. We just had a meeting with them last week, that one where there are some new federal TOD related programs that they are excited about trying to go after and get grant funds from the, federal government instead of state, to build that. In the technical terms, parking, is something that you can build it for, but we don't necessarily know what their kind of grant, award criteria is. And so we, committed to partnering with them to kind of look at what those grant programs are, work on an application. It'll be a little bit of a test case of like, is it a viable amount of money to go after?
But we could also charge if we wanted to.
Right.
So we have not done that yet on any of our properties.
But that is part of, as we are having less spaces, putting our spaces in locations where parking may be sparse. That is something that we as staff have we have to come up with a parking strategy and parking control. And ultimately, as we noodle on that idea, we'll bring it back to the board to approve what that might be, because you don't want to price people out from riding transit,
Right.
but you don't want someone who has to pay $150 a month for a parking space in their apartment building to just be like, well, I'll just park for free all the time in MTS's lot. And so how do we create those actual gates and parking controls? And then what are the rules? And because as we have some parking garages where they're shared use, and so, it's really easy for people to just park there. Grantville, we've got some conflicts, that the people that live in that market rate building park in our parking spots. And so it's a problem we're gonna have to solve, and we're trying to think of it in a comprehensive way. Like technology wise, what are we even able to implement? And then what are those goals? So one of the things that we've thrown around is, can you make it where even if the person, you don't get free parking just because you have a monthly pass, like you have to show that that day you took a round trip, So if you come in and you use your Pronto card to enter the parking lot and you swipe it to take a trip from that transit station, and then you swipe it again for a return trip, then that would give you free parking, within that 24 hours. So, but that you wouldn't be able to be like, I'm just gonna spend $72 on a free monthly pass and I'm never gonna ride transit. That's just what I pay for parking. And so again, it was those, how do you preserve parking for people that are actively using transit? And so that's kind of the problem we're trying to solve. And then we'll bring it back to the board for discussion of kind of where you want those lines.
Mr. Gold?
As we talk about parking, if I'm in my car, the only reason why I would not continue in my car is that it's too expensive to park where I'm going.
Right.
Downtown San Diego. Oh, it'll be a 6-block walk. So you know what? I'm gonna park out at Spring Street and then take the trolley. Or I'm gonna park at Spring Street and there's no parking at UC San Diego or UTC or something like that. So, but otherwise, I would assume people would say, well, I'll just drive to Mission Valley because there's parking. I'll drive to Claremont because there's parking or something like that. So the other piece, and it's a sandbag conversation, is the microtransit, the connection. Could I leave my car at home if I had a microtransit option to get me to the transit station? And we call that a bus, but is there a more express bus that doesn't have 10 stops before I get to the transit station? And that's a sandbag thing. Is there a product in between a bus with 10 stops before the transit station that maybe has 5 stops, but I'll walk a block or 2 to catch a microtransit that will get me to the station in 10 minutes instead of 20 minutes. That's a sandbag integration, I think, question, but that does allow me to leave my car at home instead of out of parking garage, needing a parking garage at a transit station. So that's kind of a bigger sandbag integration question.
All right, informational items, so we'll motion on this one. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Good conversation. All right, item 6 is the review of the draft agenda for next week's board meeting. We are intending to add the item on the transit amenities plan to what we have there. Any other comments on the draft agenda? Okay. Any staff or committee member communications?
I just want to remind you all that you're invited if you'd like to come down to our Rail Safety Awards. We're hosting a lunch for the awardees. And it's already started.
Yep. All right. Thank you. The executive committee meetings next meeting date will be October 10th at 9 o'clock in the morning. And seeing nothing else, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.